Are you sick and tired of Rift kicking your butt left, right, and center and not having a response? Well, today I'm going to teach you how to minimize all of your hiccups, all your weaknesses, all the bad things that happen when it comes to Rift. As you can see here, this is the Rift Fragment Upgrades infographic thing that I'm going to release later onto YouTube. However, I did want to do a bit of a YouTube videos describing what each upgrade does, if they're good, if they're bad, etc, etc. This is the Rift Fragment Upgrade infographic, so let's just get into it really quick. First and foremost, the one that we have here is Dimensional Fragment of Thorns. Now, what this one reads essentially is that whoever's in the backline can use their skill 1 and applies an ignore effect resistance attack down debuff. So Dimensional Fragment of Thorns has 3 check marks because I think it is one of the best new player or one of the more casual, easy to understand, valuable, very upfront, impactful upgrades that you get a hold of. And it obviously makes characters like Haste and a bunch of your other Soul Weavers or DPS not really have to worry too much about taking damage because attack down is really impactful. And if you especially are using someone like Godmother or Haste and you have like the healing or the blind or the attack down already, this just amplifies how many turns your team can survive for. As you know, most people try to survive for the 40 anyways, so good upgrade. Okay, so for Dimensional Fragment of Abundance, as you can see, I also gave this one 3 check marks because it's also really good, and it poses itself as the second survivability upgrade that you can choose. The first one being an attack down that you can apply after you get around to using your skill 1, especially on auto. However, with this one, this just increases the healing of all allies by 20%, which is helpful, especially because most people are using Tamarin, or they're using Hazel, or they're using Lifesteal Charlotte, etc, etc. This one is also really effective because with Hazel's healing, you don't really have that much issue, I guess, in the early parts, especially even if you're missing like hit chance or attack down, or if you're really on death's door and you didn't want to upgrade all your characters. This is your way of skating by and making sure that your characters don't get one shot until at least the very end, where either your tanks or your healers end up surviving. In any case, this is probably what most people would take early on. This or the attack down one are pretty 50-50 in terms of value. However, later on, especially once you get to level 8 or start hitting level 15, etc, etc, where, and this is a bit of a spoiler for the next section, but once you get some of the other Rift upgrades, Dimensional Fragment of Predation, which is just a flat out increase in damage to your team, is extremely good and probably best in slot simply because it's a 15% increase in damage across all the characters on your team, which is really valuable. I mean, there's no other way to put it. 15% increased damage every time that you attack. Like, what do you want me to say? Like, it's more damage, it clears faster, and if you're trying to get fast runs, not surviving runs, this is very valuable. If we move along to level 8 though, the first one that we have is Dimensional Fragment of the Third Eye. This one is one green check mark because it's pretty niche, and I don't really know if there's any team that really wants to use this. It says increases effectiveness and critical hit damage of the foremost warrior hero by 70%. The characters that come to mind when I think of this are maybe Ken, something like that, but like none of these really matter too much, or this one doesn't really matter too much because effectiveness and critical hit damage of the foremost warrior hero is, even in late game, or like especially in the early game or in the early parts of Rift, is not going to be very valuable because you don't really have a warrior that can resist the debuffs, or doesn't care about the debuffs, or you don't have a warrior that can resist the cooldown resetting of the boss, so it doesn't really make sense for you to want to take this one early. The critical hit damage buff is obviously nice. It is about 140% free stat line. However, most of the time people will probably put someone like Charlotte in the front, or Hazel, or Fire Cecilia, etc, etc. So this one is very low priority. I don't really recommend it at all. But if we move along, we have Dimensional Fragment of Cohesion, which is another 3 check mark, 3 checks. It's triple S quality of an upgrade, and what it says is that when the foremost Soul Weaver hero is attacked, they become unaffected by defense penetration. Now, if you know anything about the current Rift, the way that you kind of end up losing all of your health, or you take the most damage, is because this arc, it stacks and it keeps going and it keeps going, and it stacks and stacks and stacks until they essentially 100% defense penetrate you, which is a huge problem, and it does stacking damage, ramping damage. It's an enormous problem, and most people end up PP poofing just because of that. However, if you're able to take this, your Soul Weaver, presumably Hazel or whoever else you want, Tamarin, can be put in the front, and there is a 0% chance that you will ever miss a clear ever again, because just speaking from experience, alright, when you have about 1400 defense, the boss ends up doing no more than about 2500 damage on a crit, and on average is doing something like 8 to maybe 1600 damage on a normal hit. Now, again, if you're using someone like Hazel, that means nothing because Hazel heals on S1 and she uses her healing on skill 3. If you have Rod of Amaryllis, or if you have Vampirism, anything like this, like there's a bunch of ways to mitigate the damage. In any case though, this upgrade lets you run a very, very risky team. It's a multi-damage dealing team composition that also just has haste as the debuffer. And then you just have Hazel as the main support and healer at the front that's giving you attack buff, heals up the team on occasion, and then that's it. They can't die and they end up healing back everything anyways, and they clear the run no matter what. The next one that we have is Dimensional Fragment of Distortion, and this one means that after the foremost Knight Hero attacks, you decrease the buff duration of all allies by 1 turn. This upgrade kind of sounds like something that you would probably use on someone like Fire Charlotte. You put her in the front and you take some of the later upgrades that you'll see in a moment to kind of buff her as much as possible and make her just do as much damage as you like. This, I think, is less of an efficiency thing, and this is more of like a funny, haha, I can solo Automaton Tower with one character kind of gimmick. That being said, though, it's not the worst. It kind of is equally as viable, I would say, as the effectiveness and critical hit damage of the Warrior Hero upgrade. That being said, though, you're probably just going to take the middle one. Let's move on. Now, the next one that we have is the Dimensional Fragment of Extinction. Now, this one says that when the hero in the back row uses a non-attack skill, you grant increased attack buff to the foremost hero for 1 turn. Now, as I just mentioned with the Charlotte team, you can in theory put Charlotte or a Knight hero in the front, so you can decrease the buff duration of all allies by 1 turn whenever they attack. However, this one is really, really niche because this only kind of works with Hazel using her non-attack skill and then giving Charlotte an attack buff. Whereas in all seriousness, you're probably not going to use this because the next ones that I'm about to mention are either equally as good or slightly better. So it's kind of niche. Yes, you can maybe get 2 greater attack buffs, but it doesn't really matter that much. So with that being said, let's move on to the next one, which is Dimensional Fragment of Fortification. This is the row of upgrades that you get from being level 15. A lot of them are kind of niche. There's basically all just RNG based, or it's not that effective. It's not as good as it could be or should be compared to the other rows. But for this one, it reads that after the hero in the back row uses an extra attack, recovers health of all allies, and the amount is, you know, scales based off the caster's attack. Now, this one reminds me a lot of if you're going to run this on the new character Kane, or if you're going to use it on someone like Milim, because both of them have extra attacks, if I recall properly. This doesn't really matter that much because probably by the time you're running Kane or one of these other characters, you're probably not going to die that much anyways, or you're not going to struggle that much with the content anyways. So what you're actually looking for is probably this next and third upgrade, which is that after the hero in the back row attacks with a basic skill, you have a 50% chance to activate a basic skill as an extra attack. It can only be targeted, or it can only be activated once per turn. If you have this upgrade, you potentially have the chance to attack 3 times, which could be really nice if you're specifically using Sturmia. However, personally, I would rather have a character like Milim or Melissa, etc., try to beat up the boss even more with this extra hit and get more stacks or start cycling more and more. That being said, there aren't that many good choices in the 15 range, so do what you like. Honestly, the second or the third one are probably fine. Second one if you're more concerned about PP poofing, and the third one is great, obviously, if you want to clear faster. Now we actually have the most impactful and most disgusting row of all. This is the level 21 upgrades, and this is around when runs start taking 1 clear per run. The first one says that the foremost hero is unaffected by cooldown increase effects. What this means is that characters like Hazel or anyone that you put in the front can now be sat there, and so long as you don't get, you know, beat up by the boss too badly, you don't have to worry about something resetting you, or you don't have to worry about, you know, you can basically put anyone in the front at this point so long as they're tanky enough. So what that means for someone like me is that I'm probably going to remove all of the effect resistance off of my Hazel, or I'm going to be using someone like Ken, Charlotte, etc., in the front. I'm not exactly sure what it's going to be yet. However, this one is a very good option, especially if you're struggling with gear requirements. I know some people find that the 220 effect resistance that you need in order to resist debuffs is extremely annoying, and it takes up some of your best gear. It definitely takes up some of the best gear for my characters. This one is really nice for spreading your gear or for easing gear requirements. However, the next one is also really good, which is that when the foremost hero attacks all enemies, you increase damage dealt by 100%. Now, if you recall what I just said about Charlotte and how there's like a protect a Charlotte or a Charlotte does everything kind of team composition, this is probably the upgrade that you would run with Charlotte, where you run her in the front and she does the most damage, and also she gains attack buff from Hazel in the, like, you know, Hazel using a non-attack skill in the back with this other upgrade over here. If that's the case, if you're going to use this one and you really just want to use Charlotte, maybe I change this from an X and you can put this into a check mark or a one, like a single check. It's a very niche composition though. I haven't even been able to test it right now because I mean, Jesus, guys, it's only been 2 days since since the thing came out. I don't have Charlotte, so in any case, or I don't have Charlotte like maximal load either, and I also don't have level 21 of the Rift upgrade. So in this case, I think it's probably really interesting, even if you just end up using someone like Ken or Kane in the front and you just try to heal. That being said, the first and last one of this tier, which is Dimensional Fragment of Obscurity, which increases Rift Counterforce by 7 turns, or by 7, is probably going to be the ones that you use. Now, this last one increases the total turns that you can take. So increasing the Rift Counterforce by 7 helps you if you are kind of close to clearing the fight in 2 turns as opposed to 3 or 4, etc, etc. This one allows you to clear much faster, and it prevents any random RNG from occurring. However, if your enemies or if your allies are PP poofing, or if they're just, you know, getting eliminated by the enemy a little bit too early, this is kind of a bad artifact, or this is kind of a bad upgrade. I've noticed recently that my Hazel is the only one left standing by like around round 34. So if that's the case, you probably don't want to run this, and you may find value in the first one. However, I just think that with how much stat you need and with how many important team compositions, things that you have to take into account with all the units on your team, there are very obviously good upgrades that you can take, and as you see on the very bottom, and this is mostly for the infographic frogs, but the highly recommended choice or very good clear rate thing is something that I have highlighted primarily in yellow. So all of these, if you decide to take any combination or some combination of these three, these are probably what I recommend the most. I think that they'll probably lead to the most success, or let you take your gear off of other characters so it's not as cringe looking. But I have this final special note section, which is that pretty much, guys, after level 8, when you get the Soul Weaver one, it's really hard to fail. Like, it is damn near impossible. You may use more or less energy or time because you just have a Soul Weaver that's left alive, but you will never ever have a wasted run, which I think is also just ridiculous, because as it is right now, if you fail or something, or if you have to reset the whole run, you just lose all your energy, no questions asked. So in my honest opinion, the only one that's really mandatory is the Soul Weaver Depth Penetration upgrade, just so that there's no RNG. But if we move along, kind of just some public service announcements for people that I guess don't watch this video, like stuff like other teams that I don't run. Like right now I'm running Haste, Hazel, Millam, and Melissa. My team I find to work the best for myself. I am clearing about 48 to 52 to like 56% per run, which is really nice because that's 2 runs and it only costs, what, about 60 energy to clear. But the success rate of any team that you run is going to depend primarily on node upgrade choice or levels. So it is what it is, guys. Whatever you run may end up working better for you, but for what I have, I find the Melissa, Millam, Haste, and Hazel team to work better. And finally, guys, the number of runs that you need to clear is obviously going to go up or down based on what level you are, or like how close you are, what node upgrades that you have. It is, or it should be noted though, that probably by the time that you hit level 8, 10, 12-ish area, you should be trying to clear in at least 2 to 3 runs, or a maximum of 3 runs, maybe 2-ish runs. And once you get the 21 upgrade, if you're spending more than 40 energy on a run, it's probably just not worth it for you to clear past the initial 2100 season reward thing that you get from clearing out this content. But that's going to be it for everything you need to know about this Rift upgrade little chart, guys. As always, I mean, as always, guys, if you're interested in this sort, as always, guys, thank you for watching. If this helped you, or as always, guys, I hope this helped, or if you learn. As always, guys, I hope this helped, or as always, guys, I hope this helped, or you learned something from this video. Make sure to like, comment, turn the notification bell, subscribe. Make sure to check out all my other socials: TikTok, Twitch, Twitter, Discord, all the other stuff, guys. I do this at the end of every single video, guys. You know what it is. Anyways, I'll see you guys on the next one. Adios. Dude, stop. It's too cringe. 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 Dude, I'm doing it on stream because I don't have time off stream. What do you